Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Katrina Glogowski, angel investor and attorney, to talk about an article from Forbes about tobacco giant Altria securing technology in the new frontier. Katrina, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh. And I want to disclose to our listeners that I am an investor in Altria.
All right. So this is an interesting article. We kind of want to talk about this because Altria is publicly traded. Tobacco is kind of a nemesis to cannabis, and yet it's kind of inevitable that everybody, including Coca-Cola, will eventually get into the industry. And so talking about the potential to buy all of these patents and the market share and the first mover advantages and all of these things will eventually impact some of the uneducated consumers or people that don't care. Maybe it's the soccer moms or the folks that just kind of go out there and buy big brand stuff. It's going to impact the industry as a whole, and kind of wanted to get your take on that. So you've read the article, you've seen the impact. What's your first impression?
So for those who don't know, Altria is Marlboro. And if you don't know, Altria has substantial investments in cannabis in Canada. So with those disclosures aside, this article goes on to show big corporate tobacco, Philip Morris, Marlboro, is buying up technology as opposed to, for example, growing, touching the plant. Their investment strategy is in like vape units and metered dosages and those types of things in order to get in the market without actually touching the flower. And the goal here is to control the market once it's federally legalized. And if you can control the delivery device, then you can control the market. And that's what Altria is doing here.
So they jumped in last year with a $1.8 billion investment. They've already filed 2 patents for a vaporizer device specifically designed for cannabis, according to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And they're currently also the owner of 2 older vape technologies from an inventor that acquired or that sold it to him earlier. So there is an accurate dosing that's widely popular. Vaping was already hugely accepted. And then vape, that whole vape case that happened with tobacco and cannabis, putting people in the hospital for lung issues. But regardless, it looks like they're definitely going to continue to try and dominate market share, take over the cannabis market, and probably get into flower eventually.
I don't know that Altria is ever going to grow cannabis. They might produce cannabis and they might have cannabis products. Think about it. They have you want a joint rolling machine. Altria makes tobacco cigarettes by the millions an hour. How hard is it going to be for them to jimmy their existing machinery to make 1 million joints in an hour? It's not going to be that hard. I don't know if they're going to grow it. Altria, Philip Morris does not actually grow a lot of their own tobacco. They buy it from independent farmers for a variety of reasons. But this is corporate tobacco playing with cannabis, and it's coming. And you and I have talked about this on the podcast before, Josh. If you want to set yourself up, if you're a cannabis entrepreneur, you want to set yourself up to be an acquisition target for big tobacco, because once big tobacco starts playing, big alcohol, big pharma starts playing in this market, you're not going to be able to compete. And seeing a story like this, where Altria is already buying technologies, tells you it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, that 1.8 billion went towards a 45% stake in Kronos Group. So obviously publicly traded in cannabis where it's federally legal. and they have an option to buy the majority stake in that. And so I don't know if Kronos does produce or not, even if they grow. I know they process. And so obviously with hemp, pre-rolls taking off worldwide. I get calls from Pennsylvania to Poland, like literally like everywhere. People are looking for pre-roll machines, blunt rolling machines, cylindrical joint rolling machines for hemp, even more so than cannabis. And in fact, the ones I get from cannabis, this guy just yesterday asked me for a small, fully automatic pre-roll machine that's less than $5,000. I'm like, yeah, you're looking at something that weighs between a ton and $400,000, and it's an oxymoron to ask for something that's small and fully automatic. So I don't think people fully understand, and then it's my fault because I don't understand small business. But I mean, the reality is these companies aren't set up for small business, and if you think you're going to compete, I think you're kind of missing the point here. Is that these guys' first mover advantages are fierce, and it's serious competition out there.
It is. It is absolute competition. And if you look at the established tobacco industry in the United States, or even the established alcohol industry, there's not a variety of players. Yes, you have the craft brewers, and they always make that argument. Look at the craft brewing. We're going to be craft cannabis. But good luck to you, because you're going to be competing on a worldwide level.
It was a conspiracy when we said that Altria buying Juul for $12.8 billion for only a third of a stake, 35%. That was just them getting into the game early so that they could then go into Kronos and then convert that vape technology to cannabis. And here we are. So obviously that they're seeing the money. They know things that maybe the general public doesn't, like eventual federal US legalization. Otherwise, they wouldn't be dumping 12 billion into a technology when vaping isn't a true alternative to smoking. It's widely popular, but there's a ton of regulatory risk in that. And I don't think that they would invest close to 13 billion if they didn't think that there was a global opportunity for cannabis. Obviously, that's just my opinion. I'm totally speculating here. But I think that when you do see corporations like Altria investing billions and billions, I think that is a very good idea or insight into U.S. federal legalization, because again, they're not going to just dump 1.8 billion into a Canadian company. They're going to expect to bring all of that intellectual property, experience, products, services to the U.S. in the eventuality that they do legalize.
And Altria is not the only one. BAT, British American Tobacco, BAT is right there next to Altria doing exactly the same thing. In fact, there's a patent fight between BAT and Altria over their IQOS device. If you leave the United States, hopefully we can actually visit foreign countries sometime in the future. These alternatives to smoking are smoking a traditional cigarette with a lighter that's on fire is going by the wayside. Europe, Russia, Japan, Australia has left the combustible cigarette in the dust years ago. Mm-hmm. And these vape units, Israel, one of the first things that Altria bought was a vape unit out of Israel to vaporize cannabis. And that was 5 years ago. So yeah, everybody's starting to build their war chests, not only of money war chests, but technology war chests and patent war chests to get into this market. And once it is federally legalized, and the debate goes on, Josh, is it going to be good for the cannabis industry for legalization? Because now Altria and BAT come into play, along with big alcohol and big tobacco, which we've big pharma, which we've discussed before. But once it's legalized, then the big players come. And what is that going to do to Jimmy Joe Bob's pot farm there in Colorado when he produces 100 pounds a year? Can he compete?
Yeah, it's just that's the thing. How do you compete against Altria's investment of $4 billion into Constellation Brands to, how do you compete against Corona and Svedka Vodka, those other companies that they own? So putting in $4 billion into an edible company or a drink company is going to be incredibly difficult for mom and pops to come out and compete against Starbucks, for example. And like I mentioned before, the rumors that tobacco companies purchasing land in California's Emerald Triangle have spooked a ton of cannabis farmers, and yet they're totally eyeing the industry. So it's going to happen. And I think we have to figure out, how do we survive? And craft cannabis is probably the way to go, because these companies, even Tilray included, have no idea about the culture. They don't care. And that's why maybe, the soccer moms or folks that aren't into it might get duped into buying, big tobacco's cannabis. But the folks who understand what they're supposed to be buying are going to be concerned about, pesticides and just the whole natural effects of potential GMOs. And I understand that's kind of an oxymoron, because a lot of them are genetically modified. But ultimately, there's a massive distrust of big corporations, and including big tobacco, big pharma. So I don't know. Time will tell. I'm not sure that people will gravitate, but they're going to get plenty of market share.
Of course. I mean, Bud Light is the biggest selling beer in America. Bud Light.
Yeah, sounds gross. Yeah, and big pharma, big tobacco, cannabis sounds gross too. But I think there are going to be benefits to it. They're going to bring, legalization with it, banking with it, international opportunities with it. It's just unfortunate we have to try and compete with them on a much smaller level. So I guess we have to wait and find out.
Yes, we will, Josh.
All right. I want to thank my guest, Katrina Glogowski, angel investor and attorney. I always appreciate your insights, Katrina. Thanks again.
Thanks, Josh.
I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out, and check out these other videos that we've got.